Tāwhanawa, kia ora, kia orana, whakalowhalai atu, bulavanaka, niza, mori, ma loia lelei, and greetings to all of you. It's indeed an absolute honour and privilege to spend time with you this morning about the impetus of Pacific Voices. The beauty about this panel this morning is I'm going to allow them some time to talk to you all about why they've lent their voices to their many causes. And then we're going to have a Q&A. I'll come back to them with a couple of questions, and then I'll open it to the floor.
Hi, I'm Koini Vuli. I'm here as a first recipient for Pacific Forum Scholarship, and with my two other colleagues, Kiani from Tuvalu and Tapulimai from Kiribati, and also as to share part of my research in women's rugby here in Fiji.
Good morning. My name is Pini. I'm from Papua New Guinea, and I used to be a swimmer, not so much anymore. But so my role here now is on the other side of sports, in the governance side, administration. So I sit on a number of different bodies, wear a number of hats. So that includes the ONOC Athletes Commission, Pacific Games Council. I also sit on the governing body of aquatics, which is Pini, as an athlete representative. Also the PNG Olympic Committee as an executive board member through the Athletes Commission, so I'm the chair of the Athletes Commission, which allows me to sit onto the PNG Olympic Committee. Also OSFO, which is the organisation of sporting foundations or federations in Oceania. And I think that's about it. Also a Sustainable Development Goals champion within Papua New Guinea, so I'm definitely on the other side of sports in administration and really looking after the voices of the athletes in the governing bodies there. So it keeps me very, very busy, but something I very much enjoy.
Faumuina, my name is Tikotikoca. I'm here representing the Fiji Disabled People's Federation to be the voice of the youth with disabilities. I'm also a youth with disabilities and para-athlete. I'm happy to be here to also share on the issues of youth with disabilities and children with disabilities in encountering sports, the challenges, and to also share our way forward in our life.
So thank you for all the kind stories. Let's get straight into it. What are some of the advantages of lending your voices to the causes that you all represent?
Well, the advantages are, I mean, the ISC have put it really well. They have developed a rights and responsibilities declaration for athletes. Now, this is developed for athletes, by athletes, recommendations that have come out from athlete forums that have indicated that athletes need rights within the governing bodies of sports. So one of these is having that voice and being able to express it. And there's many different ways, but for me, in my case, I'm in my position because I was elected by athletes. So it's a completely separate avenue that the athletes can see that they have a direct path right to the top governing bodies. And so in our positions, the PNG Olympic Committee, for example, we have 2 voting rights within our executive board. So it gives the athletes incredible power to get their voices through. And once they can see that they're electing athletes that they feel that should represent their voices into these places, I think they feel that, particularly when we're dealing with sports here, where either athletes are getting directly or indirect results from any decision-making process that happens, but to feel that they have this voice in this place is really important. So this is why I got involved. I can see that there's a lot of room to grow and to give athletes that confidence that they can have that voice and that things do happen, recommendations do happen. So it is a changing thing, and I think it's pretty amazing how much power they have these days now with that whole process. So it's pretty amazing.
For me, it's an opportunity to let people know how awesome this scholarship is. Seriously, if you're wondering why I'm sitting here, I said, how the hell did she sit there? I just see her walk up and down the road all the time, right? This is an awesome scholarship for athletes, right? I see a lot of former athletes, and that means there's a lot of kids at home as well who are athletes, right? And they're finishing their education and they're pursuing other things, but you can't, you know, from my experience, you can't take sports out of us. Okay? It's part of us. And this is an opportunity for you to stay with sports, contribute with sports, you know, and pursue your education. I mean, you like to show it to your mom that you did, you did masters, you know. It's kind of like part of our development. I finished education, okay, I'm going to pursue masters. So this is an awesome scholarship, right, for athletes. It's an opportunity for us to not only do your masters, but you get to do your masters in sports. Plus, you get an opportunity to open up pathways to do research. Okay? If we want to pursue academic, academic pursuits and other things. And I think, especially for us in the Pacific, this is something that is something that we don't usually get caught up with. As soon as we go into sports, then of course work catches up with us and life catches up with us. But this is another pathway. This is another pathway that we can pursue. And I've got a very good supervisor in Dr. Yoko, so USP's got some very good supervisors. Sorry, Dr. Yoko, that's an extra workload coming your way in the next, few other applications. But I am here to be the voice that this is an awesome opportunity to pursue for any of us that is still, because we seem to be, we can't separate from sports, for most of us. Okay? This is an opportunity for us and for your kids, you know, the ones that, I think Mr. Talanoa, the Talanoa brothers, okay? It's an opportunity for us to keep pursuing what we're pursuing, and plus, good salary at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an opportunity where we come and tell people about persons with disabilities. And we also exist, we also have a right, and we also have a right to play sports. Sports is really a powerful of inclusion for persons with disabilities. We can be either one race or whatever abilities, but when Fiji is playing or whatever team is playing, you're passionate, we'll be cheering instead of our disabilities. And this is where we also come and enlighten their minds to understand about the rights of persons with disabilities, understanding about Article 30 that highlights about sports, and also to share with them that it links together with a Kazan plan with the 3 thematical areas with Team 1 and 2 and 3, highlights also in inclusion, in facilities, and also in for policymakers to understand about persons with disabilities to be part of a program. So when they discuss about issues of about sports, to include persons with disabilities too, because we've seen the power of sports. One is our Olympic gold medalist, Ilasan Dalan. Through the power of sports, he became the Assistant Minister of Sports. And also our brothers and sisters with who's intellectual, they went to Special Olympics. They won all gold medals and bronze in representing Fiji. So we are here to also, this is an opportunity where we tell people that we also have a right to play and become active citizens, and also with opportunities, it comes with responsibilities, and help build a much better, healthier Fiji. Since in Fiji, there's a lot of cases of NCDs. So one way to tackle this is the power of sports.
So for each and every one of you to be able to do what you do, there is a whole team, or there are some wonderful people that have seen what has empowered you to be the person that you are. Talk to us a little bit about these people and why they're really valuable in your journey.
Even in sporting life, you have an entourage around you that help you and assist you, mentors. The same in this role here as well, where you've got incredible mentors that have been before me and who are still there that assist. And some of those people, I'll mention someone like Barbara Kendall, who was the previous chair of the ONOC Athletics Commission, who really opened my eyes up to this world of athletes athletes having a voice and being able to speak up and change things that the athletes have a right to. And this really changed my perspective on a lot of these things. And yeah, it's incredible to have these sorts of people who are just so motivated and passionate about all different levels of sports, whether they were a sports person themselves, whether they're any good at it or not, but they just have such a good passion about wanting to change things in sports. And yeah, you see there's a lot of different avenues of how powerful sports is, whether it's you know, the SDGs that it can greatly influence, but also the decision-making process in the governing bodies, where I think it's just so diverse, but there's people all around you that have such good passion, and you just have to take bits and pieces from everyone and try and give your own influence as best you can, and leave your little mark. I know I've left my mark within swimming and the sporting area within the Pacific, but this is a whole other place where I feel quite passionate about, that I want to leave something there behind as well, that is something positive for the athletes.
For myself, I'm balancing studies and research, the content itself. So for my studies, I've really appreciated my supervisors, Dr. Yoko and Professor Vijay's assistance, and showing me how to do, because I'm learning how to do the research process. And at the same time, I have my colleagues, my rugby fraternity friends, who's the content of my research. And they've been very helpful, first of all, showing me the scholarship. You know, you don't expect it, but people are looking at things, you know. Well, okay.
There's a time that you're volunteered, and then there's a time you're voluntold. This is the voluntold time. Yeah.
So, and this same group of girls has been the one that's been in touch with my participants. You know, we do the who you know way, which is the easiest way of how to get your participants. So they've been very, very helpful, and of course, your family, of course, you know, my family's always been there, so I really appreciate those people that speak.
Thank you. From the disability sector, we have a team of the Fiji Disabled People's Federation that looks after all different types of forms of disability. And also we have the Fiji Paralympic Committee that works together to encourage youth with disabilities and also children of engaging in sports. And we also have the Pacific Disability Forum that looks after the region in the Pacific, where we go in line to see of how we can assist each other. Mostly for sports and in the Pacific, it's for persons with disabilities, voluntary base for the team to come and meet, to come and have discussion, to be a way forward. As we know, in Fiji, it's not accessible for different forms of disabilities to come and have stakeholder meetings and discuss the way forward. So we are trying to work on that and bring it to their level. We go to the community. And the funds, it's your own meat, we always call passion. You move with passion. That is one. And also we like to encourage, well, I see there's a lot of stakeholders here from different sports. To also, we are forming partnership. That's ongoing with the Ministry of Youth and Sport, with the Fiji Sports Commission. And also we always like, we like to share presence and also assist them, for them to assist us, also push if they can be a disability officer in each of these stakeholders, so they can look at all from the disability side. So when it's representatives, we are not forgotten, or we are also part.
So that I don't completely dominate, let's go out to the audience. Questions from the floor, please.
Just have two questions regarding to knowing the Pacific is paradise. And if you look at the world globally, there's an issue around sports equality. I'm just interested to know what's your perspectives on, if you were to drive sports in the community within the Pacific, what's your perception of, considering the fact that financial constraints and funding not available? So how would you, what are your perspectives on encouraging sports, especially in a community that's faced with a lot of hardships and poverty? So that's my question, first question. The second question is about drugs and sports, and knowing that cover is such a business type in the Pacific Ocean. Looking at kids that have so much talent in sports, how would you look at or perspectives around encouraging kids to stay focused on education and sports so they don't get involved in those drugs and alcohol?
Very good questions, and within regions like ours, we suffer quite dramatically with these sorts of things, and in sport, we rely so much on volunteers to make this all happen. But what I often feel, and I think, when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals and how sports fit in, I mean, sports plays a big part in being able to bridge the gap between a lot of these social issues that you might find. It is very difficult to be able to get funding to be able to make these things happen, but I would love to be able to see that sport, it doesn't need that sort of funding, it just needs the volunteers behind that are passionate about changing, and there is big change. In Papua New Guinea, we have, our surfing federation has a policy where if children don't go to school, they can't go surfing. So there's been a huge change in the amount of school children that participate in school. Not only that, they have pink noses as well, which means the women or the girls can only take the surfboard. So there's this, at no cost whatsoever, that the boards were all donated, but you see this huge, big change just because sports is involved. Kids are going to school, and girls and the women are now participating in this event. And so there's these sorts of issues which I think are quite easily adaptable and can assist in these really remote areas that there's a lot of poverty. And when you're looking at that, when you have education and how much that can change, I think that's such a big issue. When we're looking at things like health and well-being, I took part in a forum just 2 weeks ago, which was addressing that as well. We mentioned it a little bit before about the NCDs and how we can combat junk food or introducing better food and things like that. So I guess utilising advocates like myself that children might listen to rather than someone that they don't know the name of, I think goes a long way. And we do quite a lot of this in Papua New Guinea ourselves, I know, and I know throughout the region. So probably, I don't know whether that answers that question. Do you want me to answer the second one as well?
I think the second one is two-part, if I get that right. There's one around the education of drugs in school, and then
the anti-doping.
Yeah,
so the anti-doping, within ONOC, we run a campaign which is Voices of the Athletes, and we run along with ORADO, which is the Oceania anti-doping agency that looks after this. So we do some really good programs that help our athletes. I guess first of all is the approach that you're educating athletes first off to avoid any of these situations to do with anti-doping or drugs and alcohol. So making them well aware of the resources out there or the education, it is quite difficult to comprehend because it is quite technical, but we do run these campaigns, and I'm pretty sure all of the NOCs have access to all of this. So we use our athlete ambassadors, and we educate athletes as much as we can, whether it's Oceania Championships or National Championships, Pacific Games, we're out there educating.
I'd like to take it to women's rugby. With regards to a culture shift. Before women's rugby became mainstream, they play, outside of the competition. So they wait for all the competition to finish, and then they look for a free ground, and they play, right? And then they would party. They're unemployed, but they would finish partying by Monday. Right? I don't know where they get the Anyway, week in, week out, that's the culture for women's rugby in Fiji. When Fiji came into, started to qualify through, 2011, they won the South Pacific Games. They went through the pathways to qualify to the international scene. When they did in 2013, and then qualified Olympics 2016, there's a big culture shift. Okay. All of a sudden, like this year, we have 2 women competitions. So they just went from playing outside of the mainstream to becoming part of the mainstream competition. So they play in the provincial competition, A division, B division. 8 provincial teams, compulsory women team first. Second in the A, so first division has 8 women's team, second division has 8 women's team. So from outside of that, to a total of 400 girls playing during one weekend all over the country. And all of a sudden, there's a change in culture. Because they have to play against another province the following week, and another province the following week, and another one after that. And all of a sudden, they're not rugby players, they're athletes. And all of a sudden, the attitude changes. No more drinking, because they're playing against Naitasiri next week. You're gonna get bumped. Yeah? And that's not only that, it's in all part of the country. Both divisions, I go and ref all the way in the inland, the women's team are playing first. I come down to the main urban areas, the women's teams are playing first. It is a compulsory women's game, and all of a sudden the attitude has changed because they now consider themselves athletes. Yeah? No drinking. If you're drinking, you better keep it quiet. The coach don't know. And next month, on the 1st, NPC women's team, under 15 to under 19, 5 grades from 14 provinces. So in one weekend, 800 girls will be playing. The whole culture has shifted. Okay, no more drinking. Oh well, reduced. Reduced. Still athletes. But that's the big change that we have seen. Because now they see a pathway. Okay? They come from the under 15 all the way to the under 18. You get into the under 18 national team, you can qualify for. This weekend, as we've been mentioning, we have the Olympic qualifiers. And we've got all our women athletes running in there looking like athletes. Cross our fingers on that one. New Zealand always seems to look better. Straight after that, the weekend after, we've got the 15th World Cup qualifier happening down in Lautoka. Okay? We've got Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, I don't know why New Zealand and Australia is joining, maybe just to remind us how hard the competition is, but they will be there. But that's the pathway. I want to say, because of this pathway has been created, this competition has been made compulsory, there has been a culture change in women's rugby. And that, I think that answers a bit of the question. Thank you.
On sports, I'll answer your first question and I'll go to the second. Regarding on sports, how to battle poverty, I think this is where planning is very important. For us in the disability sector, if we're going out in a place where there's poverty of most persons with disabilities are unemployed or they're facing poverty, so we use sports as a tool, but this is where we work together with the National Sporting Federation for them to come up with sports and also invite the business play for them to come when sports is going on. There's a pause for them to educate persons in the community on how to have employment and how to start a business. So that's one way one is forming partnership with business partners of what first the research will be done, what type of work do they want, and so on. And then we'll get those stakeholders or business planners to come and share how they can achieve it. And also here in Fiji we have the microfinance planning where they set up small businesses, or we get the social welfare where they start small business. For them to come and educate the community on how to start a business and to battle poverty, but at the same time using sports as a tool where they can all come along and play together. Regarding the second question on drugs, I think this is very important. We can get a twin track approach where it goes together to the educational department and the community, where it goes first to the primary, secondary, high school, to let them know about the benefits of sports and how to combat these drugs, the do's and don'ts. And also show them a career path. Through sports, you can become an athlete. Through sports, you can become a coach or a sports administrator, and so on as it goes. With our communities, we'll bring in all these sporting federations, and we'll have role models as championships. One from the community, if they have a representative in sports, to tell them, I didn't take any drugs. Through my dedication of training and so on, I managed to achieve this.
All right, we just have time for one more question. Can I have it from this side of the room, please?
But the question I would like to raise this morning to the panelists, Mr. Ryan Pini, he did mention that athletes have incredible power to influence decision-making process. As we have just heard from Fiji, from Koini Vuli, on the culture. You know, the culture here in Fiji, that's why I'm asking this question. How can these athletes influence the decision making? Because many of our athletes, you know, they're keeping quiet. We tell them to do something, they do it even now without sentence. And but what we have heard from Winnie this morning, the culture has changed because of the standard. Now we are now setting standard for the real future of the unit. Don't come around and muck around. There is business there. If you want to join the national team, then you have to perform to the standards. That is a new culture. And that's why I'm raising this question. How can we change the culture of our young athletes so that they can contribute towards this important decision making? Thank you.
It is a great question. And I know within the Pacific, athletes or generally anyone in the Pacific tend to be quite shy, and I know athletes are, and it is very difficult to be able to get the athletes to speak up, and a lot of this does have to do with, I guess, in one of those aspects of the athlete rights and responsibilities is athlete safeguarding, and athletes tend to feel that you know, they may be taken advantage of if they speak up. This has been a real big problem that we've faced, and we're just trying to overcome that, to let them know that they do have a voice, and if they have any harassment or abuse said against them, they have a voice and a platform to be able to engage. But you know, trying to change that mindset is very difficult. We do run forums in the Pacific for athletes to be able to generate recommendations, and a lot of these recommendations I know from the ONOC side, we gather you know, a page or two of recommendations that come directly from the athletes, and this goes to the ONOC executive board to make these recommendations come through. This happens even at the IOC level, where even earlier this year I was part of the forum in Lausanne, and we generated those, I think, 12 recommendations that went to the IOC, and they all came through with the goods. So it does take some time to generate these recommendations. Obviously, you can't you know, take on everyone's advice and make that change happen. But I think the point is that there is this voice that you can speak to, and they can deliver to the governing bodies of the sport. So from what I have seen, I'm in a pretty good situation where my NOC, they do listen to us, ONOC do listen. So I hope that whether it's a national federation or another body, that they do listen to their athletes and make them feel like they've been heard. I think I mean, if that doesn't happen, then the athletes start to lose confidence, and then they don't speak up. So there needs to be a good mix of positive recommendations.
Thank you. Changing of mindset, from my personal opinion, I think it just comes from the individual of how they are treated at home, how they are. But I'll just share an experience because I can relate to the athletes that has not been speaking up and so on. I acquired my disability in 2012. On 2004, I got into, 2002. But before I acquired my disability, I loved to play sports. I was into rugby and athletics and so on. But when I acquired my disability and I wanted to play sports and I attended high school, it was not accessible. They did not let me play due to my disability. I wanted to play sports right from 2004. But the door opened right in 2016, which took 12 years of trying to come in to play sports. For speaking up, it's very hard. I believe due to the accessibility and they know the rules of how sports is coordinated and so on. But from 2016, then I took part in sports where I came to represent Fiji in the Melanesian Games, won a gold medal in javelin, and also won a silver medal this last year through archery in Korea. So in decision making, it really changed the power sports. But also to have my colleague as mentioned, to have a representative in each of these organizations for them to represent the athletes, because it's very important. Most youths here, because we are in a cultural context, it's very hard for us to speak up. Once our elders talk, yes, and it's the one way. And it's also to be included also in schools to let them know when they're just playing sports, not even reaching an athletic level. You have that right to talk. You can tell us what's wrong and so on. To encourage from a grassroots level. So when they grow up and become as mature that they can speak, they have no problem speaking. Thank you so much. Oh, also I'd like to mention, sorry. We had a Pacific later this year, in February 17th, where we all got all youths with different disabilities that was all held in Pini. And we asked them, how can we improve on sports and what are the recommendations do we have? So we can let the government or the sporting bodies know on how we can achieve. So I've noted down what we came up with 3 points. One is the policy and advocacy. We believe once you change that policy and advocacy, make it inclusive. While saying inclusive, it's just not talk by action it as well, to include persons with disabilities in part of it, to also have representatives in all sporting bodies and to take care of all different types of disabilities, forms of disability, and promoting inclusive sports. We can battle this changing of mindset. Also to inform, establish formal partnership of agreement in it, like I just mentioned, inclusive sports. And also, secondly, what we came and discussed was the facilities and accessibilities. For persons with disabilities, I'll just pose that question to all of us. Do you think the facilities and accessibility, the gym and the recreation center, is it accessible for all types of disabilities? The question, if it's no, then I'll ask you why. Because the rights has already been passed last year, which I mentioned on my first one. I said the rights of sports, Article 30 in the Convention Rights of Persons with Disability. It's an act now in Fiji. So that's how we can make it accessible. Because I know most of my brothers and sisters with different abilities love to play sports, but it's not accessible. The environment is not accessible. And also the program and services. People conducting sports and those trainers and coaches, do they know how to approach persons with disabilities on how to address sports? Are the materials they use access for persons with disabilities to access it? Also in their data and research, because I believe we all do data and research to find out what type of communities. Is it also inclusive that contains persons with disabilities in it, with different forms of disabilities, and just not a singular type? I believe once we all have that and when we promote it, it'll surely create a change.
Women's rugby. I have to keep promoting women's rugby. The reason is this. Like I just recently mentioned, this year we got provincial women's A and B. And we've got a big NPC that has been happening for the past 2 years, opening a whole new pathway to women, to girls. Right? And this is just the start. Right? We've started from outside of the mainstream into the mainstream. How did that happen? Because a group of girls did not give up. A group of girls persevered when people said no, when people pushed women's rugby aside. It's a man's game. They did not give the support. And after I've been doing this research, I recognize something, that this group of women should be celebrated. Not just about women's rugby, about the barriers that they have broken down. They have torn the barriers down, not just from the urban areas, but all over the country, opening doors to the new girls under 15. She will benefit the most. Because these girls have opened up, they have broken down the doors, they've broken down the cement, open up the policy, because they never gave up. And they only relied on themselves to support each other, to keep pushing until women qualify for the series. And as we refer back to the decision making, the girls have already made the decision to be part of that team. They've already made the decision to sacrifice to be a representative of Fiji. And what they only needed is support. They needed support from anyone who will further their cause, not from anyone who's not willing to further their cause. Thank you.
Last few words. Thank you to all of you for your questions. But to summarise this session, the common themes I'm seeing is that through exposure and experience, education, things can be done in faith and through family and through our communities. Our three panellists have illustrated today that the willingness to keep going, even when the odds are against them, there was always an opportunity, because not only did they see it within themselves, there was always someone around them, whether it be a parent, whether it be a coach, whether it be an administrator or manager. There was always that second set of eyes who blessed them in disguise. Thank you for your session. May you continue to strengthen others, to be in your workforce and to keep going. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.